everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're exploring Atomic Habits.
Oh, excellent choice.
It's a book I've been hearing so much about,
As you should.
and I'm really excited to dig into it with you.
Yeah.
So we're going to be taking excerpts straight from the book
Okay.
and kind of breaking down the key ideas for building better habits,
Sounds great.
and maybe even breaking some bad ones.
Absolutely.
You ready to unlock your potential?
I'm ready.
I am so ready.
Let's do it.
So one of the things that really hooked me right from the start of Atomic Habits was this concept of the plateau of latent potential.
Right.
Have you ever, worked really hard at something?
Oh, yeah.
Felt like you're putting in the effort,
Uh-huh.
but you just weren't seeing the progress?
For sure. We've all been there, I think.
Totally. And Atomic Habits compares it to, heating an ice cube.
Okay.
You apply heat, you put in the energy,
Right.
but it seems like nothing's happening for a while.
Yeah.
And then suddenly you hit that critical point.
And bam, transformation.
That's a great analogy.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
So it's like all those initial efforts, they might seem invisible,
They are, in a way.
but they're actually laying the groundwork for a major shift.
Yeah.
So that's kind of encouraging, I think.
It is. It's that delayed gratification piece.
Yeah, exactly.
What can be tough.
So, okay, let's unpack this a little bit.
Okay.
One of the most powerful ideas in Atomic Habits, I thought, was how closely our habits are tied to our identity.
Right.
It's not just about setting goals, it's about changing who you believe you are.
Yes, and that's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
Because you can say, I want to be financially responsible.
Uh-huh.
But if you deep down still see yourself as a spender,
Right.
those habits are going to be so much harder to break.
It's like that inner conflict, right?
Yeah.
You want to be a writer,
Right.
but if you never actually write,
You're not really a writer.
you're not really matching up.
You're not living it out.
Yeah,
So every time you do right, you're proving to yourself,
that's right.
hey, I am a writer.
Exactly. You're building that evidence
I love, it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy almost.
in a way. Yeah.
Okay, so it's a two-step process.
Okay.
You decide who you want to be,
Right.
and then you prove it to yourself with these small wins.
Yeah. Love that.
I like that framework. So then the question becomes okay, how do these habits actually work?
Right. How do they form? How do we break them?
Yeah.
All those good questions.
And James Clear breaks it down into 4 stages.
He does.
For any habit, good or bad.
Mm-hmm.
Cue, craving, response, and reward.
It's a really great framework.
Okay, can you give me an example? Because I am a very visual learner.
I can definitely give you an example.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say your phone buzzes with a notification.
Okay.
That buzz is the cue.
Okay.
It triggers a craving.
Ooh,
You want to know what's happening, right?
100% every single time.
Right.
Yeah.
So then the response is you picking up the phone and you're checking the notification.
Makes sense.
And finally, the reward, you're satisfying that curiosity.
Okay.
You get a little dopamine hit from something interesting or entertaining.
That's actually such a good way to break it down.
Yeah.
I'm realizing how many times I go through that cycle in a day.
It's pretty constant.
It's kind of scary, actually.
It can be.
But it's also pretty empowering, right?
It is.
Because if you want to break a bad habit, you just need to disrupt the cycle.
Exactly.
So, remove the cue,
Okay.
reduce the craving,
Yep.
make the response harder,
Mhm.
or swap out the reward.
Exactly. You got it.
Okay, so let's flip it then.
Right.
Let's say I want to build a good habit.
All right.
How do I make those new habits stick?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
Because sometimes those good-for-me things just aren't that appealing.
I know. Tell me about it.
So one of the things Atomic Habits digs into is how to make those habits attractive.
Okay.
And it all comes down to dopamine.
Oh, dopamine, the feel-good chemical.
That's the one. Your brain releases it
Yeah.
when you do something pleasurable,
Yeah.
and it wants more.
So how do we hack that?
How do we use that to our advantage?
Yeah, especially with things that maybe aren't so immediately gratifying.
Right. So there's a couple things you can do.
Okay.
One really clever strategy is called temptation bundling.
Temptation bundling.
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you heard of this?
I'm not sure.
Okay. So you link something you need to do
Okay.
with something you want to do.
Oh, okay.
So in the book, he uses the example of making sales calls.
All right.
Most people dread those.
Yeah. Not the most fun.
Right. And watching sports,
Much more fun.
much more fun.
Okay.
So the rule becomes I only watch the game after I've made 3 sales calls.
So you're hacking your brain's reward system.
You are.
I like it.
It's pretty clever.
Okay, that's one technique.
That's one.
What else?
Another powerful strategy is tapping into the power of community.
Oh, right. Like joining a gym or a running club. Finding a group of friends who are into healthy cooking.
Yep. All of that.
Okay.
When you surround yourself with people who are already doing the things you want to do,
Yeah.
It normalizes that behavior.
So it becomes the norm.
It does.
Yeah, like if everyone around you is ordering salad,
Yeah.
you're much less likely to crave a burger and fries.
Totally.
It's like peer pressure, but for good.
Peer pressure for good.
Okay, so we've made it appealing.
Okay.
Now we got to actually do it.
Right. The hard part.
That's where I tend to struggle.
I think a lot of us do.
Any tips on making those good habits easier to actually start?
There are, actually.
Okay.
So James Clear throws out a stat in the book that just blew my mind.
Okay, hit me.
91% of people
Okay.
who made a specific plan for when and where to exercise
All right.
actually follow through.
Wow.
Only 35 to 38% of people who just told themselves to exercise more actually did.
That's a huge difference.
It's a massive difference.
Okay, so it's not enough to have good intentions.
No. Nope, not at all.
You need a concrete plan.
You need a plan.
Okay, I'm with you.
So he calls these implementation intentions.
Implementation intentions.
I mean, instead of these vague goals like, I'm going to work out more,
Yeah.
you get specific.
Okay.
Like, I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room.
Okay, no more excuses.
No more excuses.
Makes sense.
Right. But then there are those days
Yes.
when even 5 minutes of meditation feels like climbing Mount Everest.
Totally.
So for those days, there's something called the 2-minute rule.
2-minute rule. Yeah.
Downscale any habit to a ridiculously easy starting point.
Okay.
Like read for 2 minutes, meditate for 1 minute, do 1 push-up.
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Yeah,
It's about like tricking your brain into taking action.
it is.
Because once you start, it's easier to keep going.
Exactly. You're much more likely to keep going.
Oh, I can definitely relate to that. Sometimes it's that initial hurdle of just like getting started.
It's the biggest hurdle for a lot of us.
That's so true.
Yeah.
All right, so we've talked about making habits attractive.
Wow.
I've talked about making them easy.
Sure.
Let's be real.
Okay.
Sometimes it's those bad habits that really have us in a chokehold.
They do.
What are some strategies for breaking free from those?
So one of the most impactful examples that Clear uses is the Vietnam War heroin study.
Oh, what?
Vietnam War heroin study.
Okay, I've never heard of this.
So they discovered that 90% of soldiers who were addicted to heroin in Vietnam quit when they came home.
Wait, seriously?
Seriously.
That's incredible. How is that even possible?
It really highlights the power of context.
Okay.
So in Vietnam, they were surrounded by these cues
Okay.
that triggered their addiction.
Makes sense.
Easy access to the drug,
Yeah.
the stress of war,
Right.
their social circle. They come back home.
Yeah.
Those triggers are gone. The habit disappears.
So it's not just about willpower.
It's not just willpower.
It's about recognizing how our environment influences our behavior.
It's a huge piece of the puzzle.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like you're not always fighting your own demons. Sometimes you're fighting the demons of your environment.
That's a great way to put it.
Right.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the idea of commitment devices.
Yes, commitment devices.
Tell me more.
So you make bad habits harder by removing those triggers
Okay.
or adding obstacles.
Give me some examples. I love this idea.
Okay, so it could be as simple as using a timer
Okay.
to cut off your internet access at a certain time.
Right, so you don't get sucked into late night browsing.
Exactly.
I've been there.
Or giving your phone to someone else during work hours.
Okay, creating those barriers.
Exactly. Those intentional barriers.
It's like admitting you need a little extra help to stay on track.
Sometimes we all do.
So true.
Yeah.
And of course, we can't talk about habits
Right.
without acknowledging the elephant in the room.
The big one. Or maybe I should say the smartphone in our pockets.
There it is.
Technology.
Oh, it can be both our best friend and our worst enemy when it comes to habits, right?
Absolutely. I mean, it's a fantastic tool for building good habits.
Right.
You've got automated savings, fitness trackers, meal planning apps, but it can also be incredibly addictive.
Oh, that mindless scrolling can really suck you in.
It can.
So I guess the key is to be really mindful about how we're using it.
I think that's the key with everything.
Yeah, make sure it's working for us, not against us.
Exactly. Being deliberate about those choices.
Okay, so we've talked about making habits attractive,
Yes.
making them easy,
Mm-hmm.
and we've even touched on breaking those bad ones.
Yep.
But let's be honest, sometimes, even with all the right strategies in place,
It happens.
it's still hard to stay motivated.
It is.
Especially when those good habits don't offer that instant gratification.
Right. Delayed gratification is tough.
So how do we deal with that?
So that's where the importance of satisfaction comes in.
Okay.
Our brains are wired to prioritize those immediate rewards.
Wow.
So we have to find ways to make those good habits feel good now.
Okay, I'm all ears because that delayed gratification thing is real.
It is very real.
So how do we make those sometimes tedious good habits feel satisfying in the moment?
Well, one incredibly effective strategy is habit tracking.
Habit tracking. Okay.
It's about creating visual evidence of your progress.
Got it.
So something as simple as like marking off days on a calendar when you've exercised.
Oh, I love that. It's like a visual reminder of all those small wins.
It is, and it taps into that sense of accomplishment.
Okay.
You don't want to break the chain.
I can see how that would be motivating.
Yeah.
You're turning those abstract goals into something tangible.
Exactly. And when you see that chain of successful days,
Yeah.
your brain releases a little hit of dopamine,
There it is again.
making you more likely to stick with it.
Dopamine, it really is the key, isn't
It
it?
plays a huge role for sure.
Okay, so we've got the dopamine piece,
Okay.
but there's one more element I think we need to consider when it comes to building lasting habits.
What's that?
Accountability.
Ah, yeah.
That external pressure that sometimes makes all the difference.
And there's a reason it's so effective.
Right.
James Clear brings up this experiment
Okay.
called the Ash Conformity Experiment.
Okay.
Basically, it shows that people will change their answers to match the group,
Okay.
even when they know the group is wrong,
Oh, wow.
just to fit in.
That's kind of scary. We're that easily influenced.
It's powerful stuff.
It is.
It highlights how much we crave social acceptance
Yeah.
and how much our behavior can shift depending on who we're around.
So how do we use this to our advantage when it comes to habits?
So one idea is these habit contracts.
Habit contract. I like it.
You define consequences for not sticking to your habit, and
Okay.
you enlist an accountability partner.
Oh, so it's like having your own personal cheerleader, but with a little bit more bite.
Yeah, exactly. It's like having skin in the game.
I like it.
So there's an example in the book, this guy named Brian Harris,
Okay.
who wanted to lose weight.
Mm-hmm.
So his contract had financial penalties
Okay.
and a social penalty. If he failed, he had to wear his rival team's hat.
Now that's commitment.
That's commitment.
So it's combining those external motivators
Yep.
with the internal ones we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach.
Awesome. Okay, so to recap, we've covered the importance of identity,
Yes.
those 4 stages of habit formation,
Right.
and some practical strategies for making good habits stick.
We've got a good foundation.
We've also touched on how to break bad habits
Mm-hmm.
and the powerful role of accountability.
It's all connected.
Phew, that's a lot to process.
It is a lot, but you don't have to do it all at once.
That's true.
Just pick one small thing and start there.
Great advice. All right, so let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about you.
Luke?
What's a habit that you've been thinking about tackling?
That's a good question.
It's a tough one, right?
It is. There are so many habits I'd love to build.
Same here.
But I think one that's been on my mind lately is getting better at managing stress.
Oh, that's a good one.
It's something I struggle with,
I think a lot of people do.
especially in today's world.
Right. There's so much going on.
It feels like we're constantly bombarded with information and demands.
So true. So how do you think about approaching that then?
Using the Atomic Habits framework.
Yeah.
Well, I think the first step is to really define what that looks like for me.
Okay. What does managing stress actually mean to you?
It's a good question. I think it's about finding ways to stay calm and centered, even when things around me feel chaotic.
That makes sense.
And then it's about breaking that down into those smaller, manageable habits.
Okay, so what are some of those smaller habits that you're thinking about?
Well, one thing I've been wanting to try is incorporating more mindfulness into my daily routine.
Oh, mindfulness, like meditation?
Yeah, even just 5 or 10 minutes each day.
I've heard that can make a big difference.
I think so too. It's about training my mind to be more present.
Right, instead of getting caught up in those worries and anxieties.
Exactly. And then another habit I'm working on is setting better boundaries.
Boundaries. Oh, that's a big one.
It is, but it's so important.
I struggle with that too.
It's about learning to say no
Yeah,
and prioritizing my own well-being.
right. Because if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't really take care of anything else.
Exactly. It's about putting on your own oxygen mask first.
I like that analogy. So those are some habits you're working on. What about those bad habits, the ones you want to break?
Oh, there are plenty of those.
Don't we all have them?
But I think the one that's been at the top of my list lately is my phone addiction.
Ugh, the phone, I feel you.
It's such a time suck.
It is. I can just get lost in that scroll hole for hours.
I know, and then I feel guilty afterwards.
Same here.
Like I've wasted so much time.
Okay, so what are you doing to try to break that phone addiction?
Well, I've been trying to be more mindful of my usage.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
tracking how much time I'm spending on certain apps.
Right.
And then setting limits.
Oh, those app timers. I love those.
They can be helpful.
Yeah.
And then I'm also trying to create more physical distance between myself and my phone.
Okay, so like leaving it in another room or something.
Yeah, or putting it in a drawer when I'm working.
Out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly.
Those are some great strategies. I'm gonna have to steal some of those. It's so tough. It's like that constant pull.
It is, but I think the more we can become aware of those patterns,
Yeah,
the easier it is to start making those small changes.
that makes sense. Awareness is key.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talked about your personal habit journey.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the broader implications of atomic habits.
Sounds good.
Like, how can these principles be applied to other areas of our lives?
I think they can be applied to pretty much anything,
Right.
from our careers to our relationships to our health.
Totally. It's about understanding how those small actions accumulate over time.
And how they shape our lives.
Yeah. One
Yeah.
thing I was thinking about is how atomic habits can help us not only achieve our goals, but also become better versions of ourselves.
Absolutely. I think that's at the heart of it.
Right.
It's not just about external success.
It's about that internal transformation.
Exactly.
So let's say someone is listening to this
Yeah.
and they're feeling a little overwhelmed.
I think we've all been there.
Right.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, where do I even start?
Right.
What would you say to them?
I would say start small.
Okay.
Pick one tiny habit that you want to focus on and make it so easy that you can't say no,
Okay, I like that.
and then just be consistent.
Right. Consistency is key.
It is, because those small wins will start to add up.
And they create that momentum.
Exactly.
And then before you know it, you're looking back and you're like, wow.
Yeah, I've come so far.
Yeah, and you've built this new identity.
And you've transformed your life.
I love that. Okay, so as we're wrapping up this second part of our deep dive into atomic habits,
Yeah.
I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Okay, I love a good challenge.
Think about one small action you can take today that will move you closer to becoming that person you want to be.
I love that challenge. I'm definitely going to be thinking about that today.
You too. It's like a little homework assignment for us.
I like it.
You know, one thing that I think is really important to remember is that even with the best intentions, sometimes life gets in the way.
It does.
And those habits, they kind of fall by the wayside.
It happens to all of us, I think.
Totally. And one of the things that really stuck with me from the book was this idea that we don't rise to the level of our goals.
Right.
We fall to the level of our systems.
Such a powerful quote.
What does that mean to you?
It means that just setting a goal isn't enough.
Okay.
We need to create the right systems to actually support those goals.
So goals are like the destination,
Okay.
but systems are the roadmap that gets us there.
I love that analogy.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the end goal. It's about creating the structure that sets you up for success.
That's right.
And it makes me think of that saying,
Yeah.
how you do anything is how you do everything.
It's so true.
Right. Like
Yeah.
if you're disciplined in one area of your life,
Yeah.
it tends to kind of spill over into other areas as well.
It does. It creates that ripple effect.
And it goes back to what we were talking about earlier with identity.
It does.
You know, those small actions, they really do shape who we are.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we have talked about how to make habits stick.
Right.
We've talked about how to break bad ones. We've talked about the importance of systems. I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
I think so.
If you had to choose one key takeaway, like one essential message that you hope people will remember from our deep dive into atomic habits, what would it be?
I think it would be that success is not about some grand gesture
Okay.
or like an overnight transformation.
Yeah.
It's about those tiny atomic habits.
The small things.
The small things that we practice every single day.
I love it.
And it's those small, consistent efforts that compound over time.
Right.
And they lead to those remarkable results.
It's like that quote, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step.
Exactly.
So start small, be consistent,
Yep.
and trust the process.
Trust the process.
I love it. Well, this has been such a fascinating conversation.
Yeah.
I feel like I've learned so much.
Me too.
And I hope our listeners have too.
I hope so.
If you're looking for a roadmap to guide you on your habit building journey,
Yeah.
we highly recommend checking out James Clear's book, Atomic Habits.
That's a great book.
It's packed with wisdom and practical strategies.
Lots of great examples.
And I think it really can help you unlock your full potential.
I agree.
So thanks for joining us on this deep dive into atomic habits.
It was a pleasure being here.
Until next time, keep those positive changes rolling.